Gear up, Scooter fam. Today we're going to go over the results from the customer service audit. Before we get going, I'd like to remind you that you can support the channel by picking up some merch, joining my Patreon, or buying me a coffee. Thanks for your support. Before I actually dive in, I got a few things to go over. Just released some quick price updates. In general, starting to see prices revert back to pre-holiday prices. In general, GoTrax has still got their prices on sale. Solar's still offering 12% off, and Apollo hasn't changed their prices yet. So those three are still on sale. The other ones are pretty much close to where they were before. But I want to talk about all those things. So one that is not speculation, obviously, is that Cabo has had to drop Wolf from the name of their scooters. If you didn't notice here, over here we now have the Warrior X Plus, the Warrior 11 Pro, the King GT, and the King GTR. The Wolf is no longer in there. I did click on one just to see if they had left it out of the descriptions, but it's been changed everywhere, so I can't seem to find Wolf anywhere in the descriptions of their scooters or on the names of their scooters any longer. So it seems like Cabo has had to drop the name Wolf from the name of their scooters, which is interesting. I guess someone sued them or gave them a cease and desist as far as using that name in their scooters. So for whatever reason, they've had to drop that, and they are no longer called Wolf King or Wolf Warrior, just Warrior and King. Also, possibly, I heard that they're restricted from selling in the U.S. This site is Cabo USA, so I don't know if that's coming into play or it has an effective date or whatnot, but that's just one thing that I heard that I was going to pass along. I'm sure that's speculation, but from the same source that provided the Wolf name change as well. So it could be valid speculation. Next is Fluid Freeride. They filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which doesn't mean they're going to disappear just yet. It means they'll have to liquidate some of their stuff. They'll have to trim down a bit and try to pull out of bankruptcy. And if they successfully do, then they'll get their business back going again smooth. If not, then they'll have to file Chapter 7, and then they will have to close down and completely liquidate at that point. But for now, Chapter 11 is sort of in between, so it's certainly not a great thing. But they have to still kind of, I guess, try to rebound from where they are. Also, they've dropped all of their Cabo Wolf scooters as well. I don't know if they're going to redo those and re-put them up, but right now there's only two scooters that they're selling in the Cabo line, which is the Mantis 2025 Fluid Edition and the Mantis King GT. So all the Wolf scooters have dropped from the Fluid Freeride site as well. Also, I know I said this before, but Paul has left ESG and is going to VMAX to run their social media over there. So just a note on that for those who might have missed that piece of information. And obviously, good luck and best wishes to Paul over there at VMAX. I'm going to miss him quite a bit watching him on ESG. Finally, Voro is releasing multiple scooters this year for 2025. They've also dropped Cabo from their line, so they no longer sell Cabo scooters. So they've moved on from them. They still work with InMotion, and they're coming out with 3 of their own. So they're beefing up their production, their line, their marketing, their line of scooters, which I think is a smart move. And I'm really, really curious. Right now, it's the biggest, considering everything, it's the most intriguing right now as far as moves and so forth from scooter companies. So I'm really interested to see how this goes. And it's just all these things are crazy. I mean, Cabo only had a couple of Voro only had a couple of scooters really, that were interesting other than a $6,000 scooter, which is fine. But it's fine. $6,000 is way more than I ever. I don't care. No. But so that that's cool and all, but they didn't really have any good middle range scooters like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and now they've got the dual motor V2 at 2,000 and a 60 volt, which is I think a decent price for that scooter. It's a nice $2,000 scooter. That's awesome. They've got this B scooter project Daytona that they're working on, which we'll see how that goes, but that's pretty exciting. And then they got some things that I don't know about yet. So I'll be trying to figure these things out as we get closer and closer, and report back to you guys when I do find out. All right. So I reached out to or tried to reach out to several companies, scooter companies, and grade them on how easily it was to get a hold of anyone, if I could get a hold of anyone. And it was Voro Motors, Apollo, Solar, Segway, and then I gave Fluid Freeride a score, although I didn't reach out to them just because I have experience with them. So I did give them a score. I scored them across. At the end, I'll go over the scores, but I scored them on availability, which was your to get a hold of someone, and then follow up, which means if there were further questions that I could get answered and so forth. How well they did that. Or how well they came up with an answer that was satisfactory. And then a resolution is just, did it end well, or how well was the resolution, or whatever I ask. And then I gave an overall score, which is sort of ranked, so no one got the same overall score. All right, so let's go over the results of the customer service test / audit, what do you want to call it. Start with Voro Motors. So for Voro Motors, I asked, I got them in a chat. I was able to get them on a chat, 2 a.m. in the morning on Sunday. So that's amazing that I was able to do that. So as they said, they wanted me to check them out and test them out, and so I really did. I first started trying to reach out to all the scooter companies at 2 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday morning. So Saturday night leading into Sunday morning. And so Voro, answered pretty quickly. And I asked about the InMotion RS. Some of the problems, I asked if they had solved the problems with the InMotion RS, if it was still problems with the motor wiring and the motor controllers going out, and they said they were aware of it. They reassured me that they would do their best to service if something did go wrong, provide service for the scooter. And then I asked, were they stocking these items? Did they have an ample supply of stock, something to that effect, or were they having to depend on InMotion to sort of get them the parts? Because that's where I've heard some of the problems existing, and they responded that they are low in stock on some of these items, and that they do depend on InMotion to get them the parts for the RS for service. So in the nicest way, they sort of confirmed that there are issues with these things, and that and it can be a little slow. If they're running low in stock, it means that they don't have ample supply to take care of these problems, and they're constantly having to try to catch up. That's really reflects more on InMotion than them, but it's still something to take into account if you were going to purchase a InMotion RS from Voro Motors, or at all, for that matter. I personally think it would be better to go through Voro than just InMotion, because you have another way to attack it, so to speak, and they can influence Voro. Voro can influence InMotion probably better than just a single customer. So I do like, I'm pretty happy with the response. I gave them availability score of 9.9. they should have really gotten a 10. Uh, but the one thing I had to just give a slight ding for was that just to ask a simple question through the chat to a person, you have to give them your information, your email address, and you got to fill out a form just to get that far. And I think just for a quick question, that's a little bit much. In the past, I've even wanted to ask a quick question to Voro, and since they wanted me to fill out the form, I just didn't ask. I mean, it wasn't that critical. It was just a quick question, and sort of to get some clarification. When I was looking to buy my Klima, I had some questions about other scooters, and I just couldn't get quick answers, and so I just moved on. And so I think they're missing some opportunities by not having those, being able to just get through with a quick, a lot less hassle, so to speak. Not that it's that big of a deal. I only dinged them like zero point 0.1 points. They still got a 9.9. So their follow up was great. Once when you're bouncing things back and forth, in a sense, and you're able to actually talk to a person, on a chat or otherwise, then you can create a dialogue and dig further and get an answer and then ask a follow up question. That's that sort of thing. So the follow up they get a 10 for, because they did a great job, and having that chat and going back and forth, like I said, kind of being able to get somewhere is great when you're able to follow up immediately, as opposed to waiting to get an answer possibly for 24 hours. The resolution was fine. I got all the information I needed, once again, because I was able to kind of bounce back and forth, and so that helped. That helped out a lot as far as getting to a point where I felt like I had enough information. So they got a 10 for resolution. Overall, I also gave them a 10. They pretty much got 10s across the board. It's that one little thing. But they definitely get a thumbs up. They definitely get a 10 out of 10 for me as an overall score. Just with that one slight thing. Everything else was spectacular as far as I was concerned. I asked a question that probably wasn't something that they would normally get in a general customer service question, digging into what's going on, problems, but maybe they would. In any case, they were really helpful. They never dodged questions. They try to answer, I guess, as politically as they could, which is understandable. And then that led to me having follow up questions, wording things differently to get certain information, and I was able to get there. So great job, Voro Motors. Thanks for recommending me to do this. And you guys are definitely on speed. Yeah, second to none. All right, so Apollo is the next one. They weren't available during the holidays as far as a chat. They had a chat, supposed to be able to a live chat, but it was not available during the holidays. Not too big of a deal. They gave people the holidays off, whatever. But it was a period of time in there where I couldn't contact them. I might have been able to send an email, but I was really trying to test the functionality of the chat, and see if I could really get through to someone. So I wasn't able to test that right away. I had to test them last, which I just got out of the way. And then once I did get into the chat, to try to get a person, I still had to fill out the form. I wasn't able to do that anywhere, but I waited 10 minutes to actually get someone to chat to before I decided to log off and not try to pursue that. So I was not able to get through to a human to chat after 10 minutes of waiting. So I got on there, I waited 10 minutes, and then I said, no, I'm not going to do this. So I sent an email. When I sent an email, they did get back really quickly, super quickly. And as far as email goes, they probably got back the fastest. So I gave them a 7 for availability. And that's simply because, one, they weren't available during the holidays. I'm not griping at them for that, but I was able to get through to everyone else. So this is quite, these scores are sort of relative in that regard. So if Voro's available at 2 a.m. on a Sunday during the holidays, I mean, I have to take that into account. So they get a 7 for availability. The follow up was fine. As far as they gave me, I asked Apollo if they had adjustable suspension on the new Phantom 2.0 60-volt version, and they quickly responded, let me know that they did, similar to the Apollo Pro, and so forth. So they were super nice, super helpful. I got the exact answer I wanted. It was a fairly simple question. I just couldn't remember. I couldn't think of anything else to ask Apollo. So I mean, I could have looked the information up and got that, but I was trying to, something I was trying to think of that I didn't have off the top of my head. I just decided to ask them that question. It was an easy question. They gave me a quick answer. It was satisfactory. So they got a 10 for resolution and an overall score of 8. So, not bad. Once I was able to get someone, it went pretty nicely, and they had a super speedy response to an email. So next is Solar. They didn't have a chat option, and I did have to send an email, and during business hours. So what I don't, that was fine. So I had to wait. I didn't get a hold of anyone Sunday other than Voro. So I waited till Monday. I was able to get a hold of Solar on Monday. I was not able to get a hold of Apollo until yesterday, which is why I'm doing the video now. So because of the holidays, and I wanted to test the chat, which was not successful. In any case, Solar gets an 8 for availability, simply because they didn't have a chat at all, and so I just couldn't give them a 9 for that. So they get an 8, and they got back fairly quickly. Nothing crazy, not 24 hours or anything. Everybody got back on the same day on this one. So they get an 8 for availability, just because I couldn't jump on and just get a chat. If they had been able to do it 24/7, like Fluid, they would have got a 10. And if they made me fill out a form before I could chat, they would have got like a 9.9 like Voro. So they didn't get a 9 because they didn't have a chat at all. And then they did pretty well with the email. I didn't have any complaints about that. So they got an 8 for availability on that. Solar did. So their follow-up is a 9. I gave them a 9 out of 10. They did a great job. They did a really great job. But I couldn't give a 10 on follow-up because I still got an email back. I didn't get to test that out. They gave me a more than satisfactory answer. So I was happy with that. Now, what I asked them was, I asked them about their price on their website being $32.99 for the Solar Hyperion. Yet when you go down to select the Tron, there's no option not to select it. So it looks like the price is $32.99, and when you actually get down there, it's not $32.99 because you have to add a Tron light. So I asked them about that, and their reply was above and beyond. They could have responded a number of ways. Yeah, we're sorry about that. We'll look into that. Apologize for the confusion. Right now we had 12% off, which will cover that, so forth. But they didn't do that. They said that they would give me the cost. They would deduct it from the total, and that I could still choose a Tron light of my choice, and that they would give me credit towards that, towards the purchase. In other words, an additional discount. On top of the 12% that it was going for now. So that totally surprised me. I'll be honest, I was not expecting that. I just had a simple question about, hoping they would say, yeah, once again, that, we'll get that fixed. And so a person could go on there. That's all I was trying to accomplish, was them acknowledging, okay, we see that now. We'll get that corrected. Apologize for the inconvenience, something like that. But they didn't. They said, you know what, we'll give you an additional. So it was a total of like between $500-$600 off total off the Solar Hyperion, because I brought up the fact about not being able to use the Tron Lite to or leave it out to keep the $32.99 price, which they were advertising. They get a 10.1. They get a 10.1. I was trying to see how to do that, but since I gave Voro a 9.9 for that one little ding, I gave them a bump up on that. They went above and beyond, in my opinion, for that. So they get a 10.1. That was more than I would have expected. I think that shows their dedication to customer service and to get a resolution quickly. So even though I was not able to talk to them in a chat, they were super addressing my issue in a way that I would, I just couldn't say no. Like, okay, sure, that makes me really want to deal with solar. It makes me really interested in the Hyperion now a little bit more, just because it makes me feel like they're going to a minimum, which is what I was trying to find out with this experiment here. Is how quickly am I going to be able to get someone and get somewhere? Get someone and see how they respond. Had Fluid answered me in a similar fashion when I had problems with my Klima, and they said, "Oh, you know what? You've got insurance. You got shipping insurance. You pay for that extra. You got a faulty scooter. Let us go ahead and send you out. We'll take care of everything. We'll send you out a fresh new scooter with no problems, and your brakes will be fine and everything." Then that would have been nice. It would have been a little bit above and beyond. They didn't even make me question it. They didn't even go back and forth. And, oh, let me see a video. Can I see the video? Blah, blah, blah. They just should have said, hey, that's not acceptable. We apologize, and we'll get a fresh scooter out to you immediately. And that would have been the way to handle that. One question, one email, even if it took 24 hours. That would have been great. That would have been absolutely great. But instead, we went back and forth. I got tired of going back and forth, so I settled on a solution that was acceptable, but certainly not above and beyond. And I would have preferred at least some options. They never even gave me the option of doing that. I asked, I inquired, but they sort of kind of steered it a different direction. So it's fine. I'm happy with the Klima. I'm happy with my brakes. I got no problems with them. But yeah, in any case, had they conducted themselves the way that Solar conducted themselves in this particular situation, night and day difference. So they get an overall of 10.1, being a high score on here because they did go so far to resolve my question. And for these others, it wasn't anything against them. Voro did a great job with the question that I gave them. But I just and it's nothing against. Like I said, this is not exactly fair because I didn't ask them all the same questions. I asked them something specific to their brand and company, and so they all didn't have an opportunity to do that necessarily. But I kind of just based it on also just the interaction. None of it was bad. A 10 is obviously as best. I didn't expect Solar would get above a 10, but they just really impressed me with their response. I thought it was the level of service that I think scooter companies should be offering, and which is to exceed expectations. That was not my expectation. And they went over beyond my expectation, that's how you build a brand, and that's how you dominate a market. So in that regard, all scooter companies could take a note from Solar on that one specific question. So being great at response and being just overly accommodating, that's the way to go. So next up, Segway. Segway did have a chat. They did have a chat like Solar, that I could get a hold of someone during certain hours, so during business hours. I did go back and get on with Segway. I asked them if there was an option to replace the trigger throttle, and that when on the Segway GT2, and when it might be back in stock. Uh, and and I reached out. I just kind of just tried to get someone on. I didn't necessarily make sure I was talking to the right person in any of these. I just got on, and however quickly I could get a hold of someone, whoever that might be, I started asking them questions. So I kind of threw them some curveballs and just reached out to whoever I could to get answers. And everyone that I reached out to didn't pawn me off on someone else, didn't say you got the wrong department. Here's the number for that department or whatever. They didn't do that. They actually went to the trouble of answering my questions. So that was pleasing. But in any case, so Segway was available to chat during business hours, so they get the same score as Solar, even though Solar didn't have a chat. Next up is Segway. So for availability, they did have a chat, someone you could jump on and chat with during business hours. So I did give them a 9 for availability. It wasn't 24 hours a day like Voro, so they couldn't get a 10. You did have to fill out a form to get through. So they did get a 9 out of 10 for availability. The follow up was great. Obviously, once you get in the chat and be able to bounce things back and forth, that leads to usually a better resolution and certainly a much quicker resolution. So they got a 10 on follow up. As far as resolution goes, they got a 9. Nothing bad. They did a good job of answering my questions, so to speak. But at the end, it was just kind of what I asked them, if you could replace the throttle on the GT2 and also when the GT2 would be in stock. And their responses pretty much after kind of, going back and forth a little bit was that they didn't think so on the twist throttle, and they didn't recommend it. And then the response to was that they didn't know. They didn't know when it was going to be back in stock. So, they didn't go to a ton of trouble to try to get answers for me in that regard. They were helpful, and they did take some time to try to figure it out. But they could have said anything like, we're expecting 3 to 6 months, or maybe there's a reason they told me. I don't know, but I didn't exactly get a satisfactory answer to the question about when they might be back in stock. And that's, maybe they didn't have that information, and that's fine. But from a customer standpoint, if I'm curious, they can give me some time frame. Someone should know that question. And I don't like, maybe there's a reason, but for whatever the case, this is from my perspective. I did not get a good answer on that. They pretty much said they didn't think it was a good idea to do that on the twist throttle. So I kind of expected that, but I thought I would ask anyway, and then hopefully find out more about when they would restock the GT2. But they didn't have a good answer for me. They got an overall score of a 9. So 9 on availability, 10 on follow-up. Resolution was a 9 and an overall of a 9. Then last is Fluid. This is based on my personal experience with the Klima with them. Availability, they get a 6. They get the lowest score of availability simply because it takes 24 hours to get any kind of response, period. They get a 6 for follow-up because it takes another 24 hours to get a response. So I get a 6 for that. I gave them an 8 for resolution. Eventually, we did get somewhere that was satisfactory, but it did not exceed my expectations. It didn't quite meet my expectations, but it was satisfactory. It was just okay. And I was happy to get there when I finally did get there, but it took a very long time to get there, which kind of plays into it, so to speak. So I know the follow-up, they get a separate score than resolution. And like I said, I did eventually get satisfactory resolution, but I would have preferred just a little bit more diligent, responses, and ways to get things quicker. They could have gave me several options in an email and said they were picking and choosing what to respond to from my email. and it just wasn't comprehensive, and it was a very slow back and forth, and very frustrating in that regard. So the resolution, they get an 8 out of 10 because we did finally get somewhere positive, and I'm happy with the resolution in general. So they get an overall score of 7, which is the lowest of all. Because they really did. I didn't have as much to go through this as the rest of these places, but just on a basic, just right from jump, they were outdone. I could have had any question at all for fluid. It still would have taken me 24 hours to get an answer. And if I had follow-up questions, it still would have taken me another 24 hours. Based on my responses from the other companies, even in an email, how quickly they responded, I just don't believe it would be another 24 hours before they got back to me on a normal basis. I'm sure there could be some things where they had to do a bit more, and that's understandable. But I went through several these with fluid, and every single time it was 24 hours at least once they did go over 24. But which was my very last response with them. So the final scores is Solar is actually number one at 10.1. It's just because they went above and beyond on the resolution that brought their score way up. They did an overall better job because of how they handled themselves. Not everyone I asked had an opportunity to do that, but I'm just basing it on feel, and that was a great response. I did not expect it, and I think that shows their commitment to building their reputation. Voro got a 10 out of 10, even though I wish they would make it easier to initially contact a person on their chat. It still was not difficult. It still was fine. I got no problems with it whatsoever. Just that one little thorn in my side a little bit. Not a big deal, but if I weren't doing this, I don't know if I'd have went to the trouble of filling out that form. So that's just something to consider. In all cases, I went ahead, if I had to fill out a form, and filled out a form because I wanted to get some kind of response. But if it was just a simple question and I was just doing a bit of research for my own research, then I don't think I would have filled out the form. And previous to doing this, I didn't fill out the form. So that just shows, that it's a little bit of a missed opportunity for them. But in any case, the follow up was great because my gosh, 2:00 in the morning, 24 hours a day, that's a 10 out of 10. If that other part was just, it would be spectacular. So resolution was great, overall great, everything was great, no problems. They didn't really go above and beyond, aside from the 24-hour chat. I mean, that's great. It really is great, and they deserve a 10 out of 10 overall. So they got a 10 out of 10 overall. That 9.9 is not a dig on them. They deserve a 10. They maybe deserve a little bit more out of 10. But if I gave them that, then that would show that there's no room for improvement, and there is a tiny bit of room for improvement, in my opinion. Just making it a little easier for someone just to ask a simple, quick question to a person. Apollo, next. So Solar got number one at 10.1 just because of their outstanding response and able to solve my problem with one response, knowing that they were going to solve my response. They were going to solve that problem. It was very unlikely that I was going to reply to it with more questions, except, where do I sign up? Where do I make my purchase or whatever? I mean, they really went, it totally got me interested, and I'm like, wow, not just because they wanted to give me, I mean, yeah, that helps. They're going to, give me a free Tron light pretty much for, because they made a tad mistake on their site, or it's misleading, or whatever the case may be. The fact that they were willing to do that so quickly just shows that that dealing with them in the future, I think would be a good experience. So that's why they get the high score. It's not just that I was going to save a bit of money, which is great, obviously, but I just didn't expect it, and they got the overall best score. Once again, Voro came in second with a 10. Segway behind that with a 9. They were easy to contact. They were helpful, even though they didn't give me what I wanted as far as an answer. That could have went either way, I suppose. But it did go the way it did, and so they get a 9 overall. Apollo, super quick. Once I actually asked them a question, it was satisfactory. It was a simple question. They gave me a quick, simple answer, but it was they let me know. They could have said yes, it does, and that being it. But they explained it was similar to the Pro and so forth, and they gave me a little information, and so it was great. I did not have a problem with their response whatsoever, but it didn't require a lot from them. So the opportunity wasn't really there to go above and beyond. And once again, I'm kind of basing it on feel and so forth. So they did get back really quickly, and so they're a little bit behind Segway. If they had, if their chat had worked, it would be close. It would be close. It all depends on how that went. But if their chat had worked, they might have been very close to Segway, maybe on top of Segway, all depending on how that interaction went. But it's hard to say. So they got an 8 overall. And then last on the list is Fluid. Having dealt with them on a real problem, then a couple of problems, and just kind of knowing how it goes with them and knowing their responses, and they do some finger pointing and so forth, which is just, for a customer, it's really not pleasant. I know they're trying to sort of put the responsibility on someone else, and Voro did not do that, not at all. Like I said, they answered their questions the best way they could. They assured me that they would take care of me as much as they possibly could and so forth, and I didn't need to worry about that. But they didn't ever go, well, that's on them. I had to kind of pry, like, well, do you have enough stock, or are you kind of like, depending on them to replenish the stock so you can, just I kind of had to pry a little bit, which is great. I mean, that's fine as long as they're not like, well, that's not on us. That's what they're doing that. I don't know what the problem is, or whatever. So, and that's kind of what I got from Fluid. That's kind of what I got from Nami. Nami was like, well, that's not my fault that they didn't take care of you, so forth. But they wouldn't take responsibility for sending the scooter out with faulty brakes. So they could have owned up to that, and they didn't. They were like, well, we offered to send anyway, I'm going to get all that again. They weren't helpful. Nami pointed the finger at Fluid when I had the problem with the rotor. Fluid kind of pointed the finger back at Nami. They said that we don't open the boxes, we don't know what's in there and so forth. Instead of, just taking responsibility and saying, okay, we understand this, these kind of things happen, here's what we can do, so forth. But instead they were very much like, well, they sent us all these, they didn't send us the replacement parts, we had to wait for all this stuff. And we eventually, like I said, got to a resolution, but it was very painful, to be honest. And so they get the lowest score of all. They could use some help all along the way, availability, follow up, resolution. So they get the lowest score. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, if you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Consider joining my Patreon, pick up some merch, or buy me a coffee. Thanks, and happy riding.